All right, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling the disappearance of Hang Lee.
Oh, yeah.
This case has been cold for like decades, and it's got more twists and turns than you can shake a stick at.
Wow.
Our main source today is a true crime podcast episode, and let me tell you, I finished it with way more questions than answers.
You and me both. This case is seriously fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the details, I swear, it's like straight out of a horror movie.
Right?
Like, Hang vanishes after a normal job interview, at least that's what it seemed like, arranged by her friend.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the prime suspect. The guy's got a violent past, and he said some really creepy things.
Okay, I'm hooked already.
We're focusing on Hang, her brother Kua, the friend Nikki, and of course the main suspect, Mark Stephen Wallace.
And this case has been unsolved for so long, it's a real shame.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe, just maybe, by unpacking all this today, someone listening might have that crucial piece of information the investigators need.
I hope so. That's the goal, to try to make some kind of difference.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, so picture it. January 12th, 1993, in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
Hang Lee, she's a 17-year-old high school student, and she's excited about a job interview.
Makes sense.
Her friend, Nikki, supposedly set the whole thing up for her.
Mm-hmm.
But get this, right before Hang heads out the door, she tells her brother Kua, "If I don't come back, please come looking for me. I don't trust Nikki."
Whoa, that sends shivers down my spine.
Yeah, it's like, talk about a chilling last conversation.
I can't even imagine how Kua felt, when Hang didn't come home that night.
I know, right?
It's awful.
And it gets worse. Okay, it took 3 whole days for the police to be notified.
Really? What happened?
It seems there was a delay because of a language barrier.
Oh, right.
The family's primary language was Hong, so, they weren't super familiar with U.S. systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. It can be really intimidating to deal with the police, especially when you're in a new country and don't speak the language all that well.
Absolutely, especially when you're also going through a crisis like that.
For sure.
And then, on top of everything else, the police initially dismissed Hang's case as a runaway.
Seriously.
Even though her family insisted that, she'd never do that.
It's so frustrating.
I know, it really is.
The podcast episode mentioned that Hang left behind all her belongings, including her money for college.
Yeah, you're right.
Those aren't exactly the actions of someone who's planning to, run away.
Right.
Makes you wonder why they were so quick to, just dismiss the family's concerns.
Exactly.
It's really unfortunate.
Thankfully, though, the missing persons unit finally took a closer look.
Ooh, good.
But that's when things took a really strange turn with Nikki.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
At first, she claimed she had no clue where Hang was,
Uh-huh.
said she last saw her leaving with some random guys,
Okay.
but then, 6 months later, she completely changed her story.
She did.
Yeah. And suddenly, Mark Stephen Wallace, the guy who was supposed to interview Hang, he's right at the center of everything.
Okay, so what did she say?
Well, in this new version of events, Nikki admits she and Hang were picked up by Mark for the interview.
Okay.
And then after it was over, Mark dropped Nikki off first, and the last time she saw Hang, she was getting into his car.
Wait, hold on. If she saw Hang getting into the car with Mark, why wait 6 months to tell the police?
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you think?
That's a great question.
Was she scared?
Maybe she felt guilty that she hadn't done more to help Hang.
Possibly.
Who knows, right? There are just so many unanswered questions.
So many.
But here's where it gets even weirder. Okay. This news story brings in all these unsettling details about Mark and his, so-called business.
Oh.
He told Nikki to keep his business a secret. And even creepier, she never saw any actual clients at his painting and decorating business.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, all she ever saw were, teenage boys going into Mark's office, which he would then lock.
That's not good.
Right. Doesn't exactly sound like a legitimate operation, does it?
Not at all.
And then there's the whole incident where Mark gave Nikki a drink, and it made her lose feeling in her hands and pass out.
Oh, my gosh. That's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
This is no longer just a guy being weird or secretive. Now we're talking about someone who's potentially drugging young women.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, knowing what we know now about his past convictions, if Hang was, drugged as well.
I know. It's terrifying to even think about.
It is.
And when the police looked into Mark's history, what they found was even worse.
Oh, no. What did they find?
It turns out, back in 1987, Mark was arrested and convicted of 2 really violent sexual assaults.
Oh, wow.
And get this, he used the promise of jobs to lure his victims into vulnerable situations, just like he did with Hang.
Oh my gosh, the fact that Mark used job offers to lure victims before is like so significant, you know?
Yeah.
It suggests a whole pattern of predatory behavior, and the parallels to Hang's case are they're just chilling. It's like a playbook he's following.
Right.
Offer a job, isolate the victim, and then attack.
Ugh, it's awful. It's so disturbing.
I'm curious to hear more about those past assaults.
Yeah, you too.
How did they even happen? Like, what actually went down?
Well, in one of the assaults, he offered this woman a ride to a bus stop.
Okay.
But instead of taking her where she needed to go, he attacked her.
Oh, no.
And in the other one, he actually lured a woman with a job offer.
Oh, wow.
Just like he did with Hang, and just like he did with a woman who eventually reported him to the police.
Oh, so this wasn't the first time he did this.
Not at all. And he even wore a mask during both attacks. But here's the thing, even more women came forward with similar stories.
Really?
Yeah, they just couldn't positively ID him because of the mask.
That's terrifying.
It really is. It sounds like he was a serial predator, just like roaming free.
So how much time did he even serve for those convictions?
Only 4 years. He was released in 1991.
2 years before Hang disappeared.
I know, right?
That timeline is seriously disturbing.
It's cases like this that make you really question the justice system, you know?
Like, how could someone with such a clear pattern of violence be released back into society so easily?
I hear you.
It's so frustrating.
So what happened next? Did the police go after Mark?
You bet they did. They brought him in for questioning and got warrants to search his house, his office, his car, his truck, everything.
And they find anything?
Nothing. No physical evidence connecting him to Hang's disappearance at all.
Oh man, that's such a setback.
It is.
It's not surprising he lawyered up and refused to cooperate, though.
Yeah, classic move for someone trying to avoid accountability. But you know what impresses me?
What's that?
Hang's family never gave up. They kept her story alive, kept pushing for answers.
They sound incredible.
They are. It's really inspiring.
But I mean, years went by with no leads.
I know.
That must have been so hard on them.
It must have been.
Were there any, like, breaks in the case?
Well, in 2004, something happened that, on the surface, seemed completely unrelated.
Oh!
But it actually gave the investigation new life.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The St. Paul Police Department hired another investigator for their missing persons unit.
Oh, wow. So they were finally getting more resources to dedicate to cold cases.
Exactly.
That's great.
And guess what? In 2005, Hang's case was officially reopened.
Wow. 12 years after she vanished.
12 years.
That's amazing that they didn't just forget about her.
It is. And the Carol Sun Carrington Memorial Reward Foundation even got involved. They offered a $5,000 reward for information.
That's awesome.
Investigators started re-interviewing people like Mark and Nikki.
So there was, like, some renewed hope.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like someone lit a fire under the investigation.
This is all sounding pretty promising. What happened next?
Well, more disappointment, unfortunately. Mark still refused to talk.
Ugh, come on.
And then Nikki, who had actually cooperated with the police before, she suddenly hired a lawyer and climbed up too.
Wait, what? Why would she do that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, was she getting legal advice that cautioned her against talking? Or did she suddenly remember something she didn't want to share?
Yeah.
I guess we may never know.
Yeah, that's frustrating. It feels like they were so close to a breakthrough.
I know.
So close.
But then another development popped up in 2009 that was pretty interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Remember that house Mark inherited from his mother?
The one he lived in on and off throughout his life.
That's the one.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it got foreclosed on.
Oh, wow.
Investigators saw this as a chance and got permission to bring in some cadaver dogs to search the property.
Okay.
And get this, 3 different dogs, all alerted to the presence of human remains in the same spot.
No way.
Yes, a corner of a detached garage that was built after Hang's disappearance.
3 dogs, that's gotta be significant.
You would think, right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about cadaver dogs. They aren't always 100% reliable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so many things can influence their accuracy, from the weather to the handler's experience. It's not a slam dunk.
So what did the investigators do?
They drilled into the concrete floor of the garage, hoping to give the dogs better access.
Okay.
But then, nothing. No more alerts. The search came up empty. It was a crushing blow.
I bet.
They ripped up that garage floor, hoping for answers, but came up empty.
Wow, imagine the family's despair.
I know, another dead end.
This case is heartbreaking.
It is.
Did anything else ever come up?
Well, for years there wasn't much progress.
Oh, man.
But then in August of 2016, 23 years after Hang vanished, Mark was arrested.
Hold on, 23 years later, what was he arrested for?
It wasn't directly related to Hang's case.
Oh.
The police found him in a motel room with a 20-year-old woman who had a domestic abuse. No contact order against him.
Wait a minute, so even after all these years, Mark was still preying on women?
It certainly seems that way.
Wow.
This incident really gave us a glimpse into his ongoing pattern of predatory behavior.
So what happened with that woman? Did she press charges?
She did, and she told the police some pretty chilling things.
Like what?
She described Mark as being extremely controlling and abusive.
Oh, no.
He even threatened her life, claiming he'd killed before and knew how to get rid of evidence.
You've got to be kidding me.
I know, right?
This guy is a nightmare.
He is, and she told the police that Mark admitted to her that Hang entered his business and never came out.
Okay, that's huge. After all these years, he finally admits something.
That's a pretty damning statement, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it still wasn't enough to charge him with Hang's murder.
What? Why not?
Because they still don't have that key piece of evidence, a body, or any physical evidence that directly links him to her disappearance.
Oh, man.
It's his word against hers, and in a court of law, that's just not enough.
Ugh. Talk about frustrating. Did anything come of his arrest?
Well, he was convicted of kidnapping in this 2016 case and got 4 years in prison.
Okay.
But here's the thing. He was also classified as a sexually dangerous person.
What does that even mean?
It means that even after his prison sentence is up, he could be held indefinitely. It's not that common, but it's reserved for people who are considered a high risk to reoffend.
So basically they're saying he's too dangerous to be let out.
Exactly. And as of today, he's still behind bars.
That's a small comfort, I guess. At least he's not out there hurting anyone else.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the justice Hang's family deserves, but it's something.
It sounds like this whole experience has been incredibly tough on them, especially for her brother, Kua.
I know.
He's carried the weight of her last words and all the unanswered questions for all these years.
It's heartbreaking to think about. He mentioned in the podcast how painful it is to see other families of missing persons get closure while his family is still in limbo.
I can imagine it must be incredibly difficult.
It would be so bittersweet.
Yeah, so where does the case stand now?
Officially, it's still unsolved.
Oh.
But investigators haven't given up. They're still looking for any information that could help them solve the case.
I hope they find something.
Me too. Even the smallest detail could be that missing piece.
It makes you wonder what really happened to Hang.
It does.
It sounds like Mark is most likely responsible, but without that concrete evidence, we're left with more questions than answers.
This whole story is a stark reminder that even seemingly ordinary situations can turn dangerous.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder to trust your gut instincts
Yeah.
and to never be afraid to speak up if you see something suspicious or if you're ever in a situation that makes you feel unsafe.
You're right. Sometimes our instincts are trying to tell us something important.
They are.
Hang tried to warn her brother about Nikki.
Right.
And while we don't know exactly what happened between them, it's a tragic reminder that we should always listen to that inner voice.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Hang's case really highlights the need for us to be vigilant, both as individuals and as a society.
Yes.
We need to be more aware of the dangers that exist
For sure.
and support victims of abuse.
Right.
And we need to push for a justice system that holds perpetrators accountable and protects potential victims.
Well said. I have to say, this whole deep dive has been a roller coaster of emotions.
I agree.
It's sad, frustrating, and honestly pretty scary.
It is.
But it's also a powerful reminder that we need to keep these stories alive.
I agree. We can't let Hang's memory fade. Someone out there might know something that could help solve this mystery.
I hope so.
Even after all this time, there's always hope.
So I'm throwing this out to you, our listener. What are your thoughts? What are your theories about what happened to Hang Lee?
Yeah.
We've walked through the facts, the twists, the dead ends. Maybe you've spotted something we haven't.
Don't underestimate your own powers of observation and critical thinking. Put yourself in Kua's shoes.
Yeah.
Your sister warns you about someone, then vanishes. How would you feel? What would you do next? Revisit the details we discussed today and see if you can connect the dots in a new way.
I like that.
Maybe you'll come up with something that could shed new light on this enduring mystery.
And if you have any information, even if it seems small or insignificant, please reach out to the authorities.
Yes, please do.
You can find their contact information on our show notes. Every bit of information helps.
Remember, Hang Lee was a young woman with hopes and dreams. And her story deserves to be heard.
Yeah.
Let's keep her memory alive and never stop searching for answers.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you.
This is heavy stuff. We need a break.
For sure. Well, in one of the assaults, he offered this woman a ride to a bus stop.
Okay.
But instead of taking her where she needed to go, he attacked her.
Oh.
And in the other one, he lured a woman in with a job offer, just like he did with Hang.
Wow, so this wasn't the first time he pulled this.
No, not at all. And he even wore a mask during the attacks. But here's the crazy part. Even more women came forward with similar stories.
Really?
They just couldn't positively ID him because of the mask.
That is terrifying. It sounds like he was just a serial predator, like roaming free.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
So how much time did he actually serve for these convictions?
Only 4 years. He was released in 1991.
2 years before Hang disappeared.
Exactly. That timeline is seriously messed up.
It really is.
It's cases like this that make you question the whole justice system, you know?
I hear that.
How could someone with such a clear pattern of violence be released back into society so easily?
I know, it's mind-boggling.
It's like they were just setting him up to offend again.
So what happened next? Did the police go after Mark?
Oh, you bet they did. They brought him in for questioning and got warrants to search his house, his office, his car, his truck. They searched everything.
Did they find anything?
Nothing. No physical evidence connecting him to Hang's disappearance at all.
Ugh, another dead end.
It was a major setback, for sure.
I bet. It's not surprising he lawyered up and refused to cooperate, though.
Right. That's the classic move, trying to avoid any accountability. But you know what's really impressive?
What's that?
Hang's family never gave up hope.
Wow.
They kept her story alive. They kept pushing for answers.
They sound like amazing people.
They are. It's really inspiring, especially after years went by with no leads.
Yeah, that must have been incredibly difficult for them.
I can't even imagine. But then, in 2004, something seemingly unrelated happened that gave the investigation new life.
What happened?
The St. Paul Police Department hired another investigator for their missing persons unit.
Oh, wow. So they were finally getting more resources to dedicate to these cold cases.
Exactly. And guess what? In 2005, Hang's case was officially reopened.
That's incredible. 12 years after she vanished.
12 years, it's a long time. But they didn't forget about her.
It's amazing.
And to top it off, the Carol Son Carrington Memorial Reward Foundation got involved.
Really?
They offered a $5,000 reward for information, and investigators started re-interviewing people like Mark and Nikki.
So there was like a glimmer of hope.
Absolutely. It felt like a fresh start, like someone had lit a fire under the investigation.
This is all sounding pretty promising, so what happened next?
Well, more disappointment, unfortunately.
Oh no, not again.
I know, it's heartbreaking. Mark still refused to talk. And then Nikki, who had actually cooperated with the police before, she suddenly hired a lawyer and clammed up too.
Wait, what? Why would she do that?
It's a great question, isn't it? Was she getting legal advice that made her change her mind?
Maybe.
Or did she suddenly remember something that she didn't want to share?
It's so frustrating. It feels like they were so close to a breakthrough.
I know, so close. But then in 2009, there was another development that was pretty interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
You remember that house Mark inherited from his mother?
The one he lived in on and off throughout his life.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it ended up getting foreclosed on.
Oh, wow.
And investigators saw this as a chance, so they got permission to bring in some cadaver dogs to search the property.
Cadaver dogs. Okay, now it's getting interesting.
And get this, 3 different dogs, 3 of them, all alerted to the presence of human remains in the same spot.
No way. That's got to be a good sign, right?
You would think so.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about cadaver dogs. They're not always 100% reliable.
Oh, really?
No, there are a lot of things that can influence their accuracy. The weather, the handler's experience, not a slam dunk.
Okay, so what did they do?
They drilled into the concrete floor of the garage, hoping to give the dogs better access, but then nothing.
Oh no, another dead end.
I'm afraid so. No more alerts. The search came up empty.
Oh man, that must have been devastating for everyone involved.
It was a huge blow. They tore up that garage floor looking for answers and found nothing. Imagine the family's despair.
It's heartbreaking, really.
It is. This case just takes you on such an emotional roller coaster.
Did anything else ever happen?
Well, for years, there wasn't much progress.
Oh man.
But then, in August of 2016, get this, 23 years after Hang vanished, Mark was arrested.
Hold on, 23 years later. What was he arrested for?
It wasn't directly related to Hang's case.
Really? What happened?
The police found him in a motel room with a 20-year-old woman who had domestic abuse No contact order against him.
Wait a minute, so even after all these years, Mark was still preying on women?
It seems that way, doesn't it? This incident really shows his pattern of predatory behavior. It's just mind-blowing.
Wow, this guy never learned his lesson.
It seems not. So what happened with that woman? Did she press charges?
That's what I want to know.
Well, she did, and she told the police some really chilling things.
Like what?
She described Mark as being extremely controlling and abusive.
Oh, no.
He even threatened her life, claiming he'd killed before and knew how to get rid of evidence.
Oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me.
I know, this guy is a nightmare. He even told her that Hang entered his business and never came out.
Whoa, that's a pretty big admission, right, after all these years?
It's a damning statement for sure.
So did that lead to any charges for Hang's case?
Unfortunately, no. It still wasn't enough to charge him with Hang's murder.
What? Why not? I mean, he basically admitted it.
I know, it's crazy, but they still didn't have that key piece of evidence, a body, or any physical evidence directly linking him to her disappearance.
So it's basically his word against hers?
Exactly, and in a court of law, that's just not enough to secure a conviction.
Man, that's so frustrating after all this time and they still can't get him for it.
It's a tough pill to swallow, for sure, but at least something came from his arrest in 2016, right?
Oh, right. What happened?
Well, he was convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 4 years in prison.
Okay, at least there's that.
But here's the thing. He was also classified as a sexually dangerous person.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that even after his prison sentence is up, he could be held indefinitely.
Whoa, seriously.
Yeah, it's not that common, but it's reserved for people who are considered a high risk to reoffend.
So basically they're saying he's too dangerous to ever be let out.
Pretty much, yeah. And as of today, he's still behind bars.
Well, that's a small comfort. At least he's not out there hurting anyone else.
Exactly. It's not the justice Hang's family deserves, but at least he's off the streets.
I agree, it's definitely a complicated situation. But what about Hang's family? How are they doing after all these years?
It's been incredibly difficult for them, especially for her brother, Kua. He's carried the weight of her last words and all those unanswered questions for decades.
I can't even imagine. It must be a heavy burden to bear.
Yeah, in the podcast, he talked about how painful it is to see other families of missing persons find closure while his family is still stuck in limbo.
Yeah, I can see how that would be incredibly difficult. To see others finding peace while you're still searching for answers.
And tragically, Hang's father passed away a few years ago, never knowing what happened to his daughter.
Oh no, that's just heartbreaking.
It is. It really highlights the devastating ripple effects of a case like this. It's not just the victim, it's the entire family and community that suffers.
You're right. It's a reminder that these cases are about real people, real lives that have been shattered.
Absolutely.
So where does the case stand now? Is there any hope for a resolution?
Well, officially it's still unsolved, but the investigators haven't given up.
That's good to hear.
They're still actively looking for any information that could help solve this case. They believe even the smallest detail could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
It makes you wonder what really happened to him. Hank, I mean, everything points to Mark, but without concrete evidence, it's all just speculation.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part for everyone involved, the lack of closure, the not knowing.
I know, it's a tough case, and it brings up some important points, about trusting our gut instincts and speaking up when something feels wrong.
Right. Hang tried to warn her brother about Nikki, and although we don't know exactly what happened, it's a tragic reminder to always pay attention to those inner voices.
Absolutely, and it also highlights the importance of being vigilant as a society, being aware of the dangers and supporting victims of abuse.
Exactly. We need to create a culture where people feel safe speaking out and where perpetrators are held accountable for their actions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This whole deep dive has been a whirlwind of emotions. It's sad, frustrating, and honestly, pretty scary.
It is. These cases are tough to grapple with, but it's so important that we keep these stories alive.
I agree. We can't let Hang's memory fade. Someone out there might know something that could finally bring closure to this mystery.
You're right, and even after all these years, there's always hope.
So we're turning to you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on this case? What are your theories about what happened to Hang Lee? We've laid out the facts, the twists, and the dead ends, but maybe you've spotted something we haven't.
Maybe you've connected some dots that we missed. Put yourself in Kua's shoes. Your sister warns you about someone, then disappears. What would you do? How would you feel?
Revisit the details we discussed today and see if you can approach it from a different angle. Maybe you'll uncover something crucial that could help solve this mystery.
And remember, if you have any information about Hang Lee's disappearance, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please reach out to the authorities.
You can find their contact information in our show notes. Every piece of information could be vital in bringing Hang home.
Hang Lee was a young woman with hopes and dreams, and her story deserves to be heard. Let's keep her memory alive and never stop searching for answers.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll join us again next time as we explore another unsolved mystery.
Until then, stay curious and stay safe.